Alright, Delilah fans, this is the episode 5 review for season 1 entitled No Good Deed. Now, I may have been initially wrong. I said that season 1 could have been 8 episodes because after the first 4, there was a mid-season recap on the OWN Network's YouTube channel. But on Wikipedia and IMDb, they do have 7 episodes listed. So technically 4 could be the mid-season finale. So there can indeed just be 7 episodes for season 1, which honestly, based off the fact that a lot of quote-unquote seasons for various shows on OWN are relatively short, I guess to kind of introduce people, test the rating system, maybe this season isn't only 7 episodes total. If so, oh well, I mean, we're almost done. Sorry the video's late, life stuff been happening, but, you're getting it. Not to mention these videos don't do super well, but I am invested in the show. So before going further, make sure you hit the like button. Follow me on social media. Links are in the description below. Hit that bell notification icon and select all. That way you don't miss out whenever I post new content. And hit subscribe. Please do, everybody. It really helps the channel. I'm trying to reach 200,000 subscribers. And also the fact that, well, I would need to increase the subscriber watch time. So just hitting subscribe helps out in more ways than one. I give this episode a 7 out of 10. I thought it was pretty decent. But, I don't know, like if this season is only 7 episodes and the views don't really increase on the videos, I don't know if I'll review this show for another season. I mean, it's not bad. It's just that I don't feel like the investment that I have is the same other people do. So we'll have to wait and see. But we have cops in the apartment. Thankfully, Leah wasn't attacked. Apparently, Tamara had called her to meet up. And apparently, Delilah didn't like that because she's not supposed to do that. Basically, Tamara had called Leah to meet in person over a good settlement out of court. And apparently, she needed, Leah out of the apartment for about an hour. And during that time when Leah got home, there was a man in her house. Thankfully, she wasn't attacked, but her phone and computer were missing. Ironically enough, the same things that the company had kept requesting Leah turn over. So Delilah actually feels like the 2 cops on the beat weren't doing a good job of uncovering every stone to make sure, there wasn't foul play or Osborne wasn't behind this skirmish. So she actually is pissed off about it. I think Delilah's attitude, I just love her tenacity and, not hot-headedness, but her stubbornness for justice. I like that about her. So we go over to Casey and Tamara, and it's interesting because Casey, and I believe the name is Mace, that's the name of the private investigator who works with Delilah. They're both kind of the voice of reason for Tamara and Delilah. It's a constant running thing in every episode where Casey understands Tamara's upset about something that happens to Delilah, or what happens between her and Delilah. And that, hey, put the ego aside, call her. You obviously both want to call each other, but one of you has to make the first move. That way, you can move on in your friendship. And during that time, Delilah actually calls. And it's funny, I think Casey had just gotten back from a workout and, he goes to shower and Tamara gets on the phone. And turns out Delilah actually is at the complex where Delilah shows up to the complex Tamara lives at, so she goes downstairs. She instantly snaps on Tamara and says that, it was foul play. You're not supposed to call Leah, and because of that, the phone and laptop were stolen. So she believes the worst about Tamara. And we go over to Gordon and his girl. Remember, it's the young student that, he cheated on Delilah with, resulting in their divorce, but actually got back together. She gets up to leave because she is pissed off the fact that Gordon and her aren't able to take their relationship to the next level. She's always going to be his student in his eyes, and the fact that, she needs to find some place to live in the next few weeks. So she ends up leaving him. Also, we got Nate calling Christine to see if she can actually come over tomorrow to visit for dinner. And, she's kind of cold to him and rushes him off the phone. And it turns out that, well, she's in bed with Andre. Delilah actually goes to visit her father about the whole situation in regards to Leah's apartment being broken into, the cops who were on the case not doing a good job of looking into it more. And she kind of asked, hey, are there any people that could look into this case to press into Osborne, because I do feel this was a setup. And she actually brings up the fact that I feel like this case goes deeper and also involves Nate's accident. And it's kind of funny because I understand where she's coming from. Like, I wouldn't ask you for any help unless I had no other option, but please do this for me. And we go to Mace and Delilah playing, what was it, a card game? I forgot what they were playing. Was it spades or something? And, the conversation kind of turns to, hey, I got a couple tickets for this event. Would you like to go? It's like, no, I don't think so. So basically, he gets rejected in a nice way because I think he brings up Jamal, the guy that, Delilah is trying to get set up with via Tamara. And she says, oh, no, we only met a couple times. Don't worry about it. So, he tries to make his move and, it doesn't work out. So then we go to Tamara checking with her bosses to make sure the whole situation involving Leah's break-in wasn't something arranged by her company that she works for. But her boss kind of half-ass answers it. Well, I didn't have anything to do with it. You should ask my father. So we go over to Harper and Delilah, and basically Demetria is tasked with putting the paperwork exactly how Gary Shea's wife had it. That way, it can be handed back over to her because they got all the useful information they could from the paperwork. Nate, he's getting assistance from, one of his caretakers at the hospital. He's getting dressed. He's excited about, seeing his wife soon. Just getting ready for the big move in the next, couple weeks. So we got Gordon and Delilah, and he calls her saying, hey, I need to come over to talk. And she's like, okay, we'll be at home. Delilah and Tamara actually are at their lunch because earlier in the episode when Delilah went over to confront Tamara about the calling Leah, she's like, are we still on for Monday? Our lunch to talk about the wedding? Yes, we are. It starts off a little tense, but they make it through the basic things like, hey, it's going to be Easter weekend. It's going to be at this specific venue. Thankfully, Casey has this, what's the use of having power if you don't use it? It's like, oh, you're judging me. No, I'm not judging you. So she actually says, hey, you know what? Look, I asked my bosses. They had nothing to do with the break-in. Did you ask Ben Sr.? And you notice how Tamara kind of looks away and says, yeah, I did. And then it turns out she didn't. So Delilah gets up to leave. So after that, we go to Delilah's dad, doing his own little investigation. And I think he's talking with like another member of like the police force. And apparently, because the Osborns, and all I can think about is Norman Osborn, Spider-Man. That's all I can think about. Basically, Oscorp, they're donating a lot of things to the police station. And it's pretty interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. I actually jumped ahead. You know what? Fine. I'll just finish it up because my notes, I had an arrow pointed to another set of notes. Delilah's dad, there are a lot of police body armor that's being donated to the police station. I think he was talking with Paul. Paul was the name of the individual he was speaking with. And Paul's like, hey, your daughter, she's asking a bit too many questions. You need to be careful. Because, her dad just walks away. And while he is, what's his name? Wes, he's walking back to his truck. And the guy's like, hey, in situations like this, it's basically he's saying whenever there's a whenever there's a big, powerful company involved in some sort of scandal, there are going to be some cover-ups, some payoffs. And if certain people ask the wrong questions or poke their nose when they're not supposed to, that's where people get hurt. And I'm like, did he just threaten Delilah? All right, so we got Gordon stopping by the house, talking with his kids, and he briefly speaks with Maya because it turns out she wants to go to some school in like Philadelphia, but of course Gordon's like, hey, you need to talk with your mother and me together about this. So he brings up the fact that, hey, I've been with my student for a year again, Keita, basically the young girl that Gordon's with. We've been together back for about a year now. Her parents know, and we want to move in together. And Delilah's like, fine, you know what? Do what you want. But our kids, they're not stepping foot in that house with that girl. So then we go over to Nate and Christine's dinner. And, he's trying to be as romantic as possible. It's like, hey, I got, a surprise for you. He gets her to unwrap a puzzle of Niagara Falls. Like, hey, it's a promise that I've always had to take you there. And she's rude about it. It's like, wait, are you sure you can go like this? Like, yeah, they got wheelchair accessible areas and whatnot, so yeah, we can go. I always keep my promises. Nate, I don't think I could do this. What do you mean? Well, I'm just trying to make things work for me, you, and our son. What's going on? I don't think I could do this. So he's dejected. he doesn't really know how to, bless his heart. He doesn't know when he's not getting anywhere with her. I mean, Delilah doesn't mince words, but she tells the truth. All right, so then we go over to Casey and Tamar. I believe they're working on the seating arrangements for the wedding, and Casey is once again the voice of reason. And we go over to Mace and Delilah. Once again, he's the voice of reason, saying, hey, you should call her. It's like, fine, you know what, let me get the phone. And then she snaps him, like, don't you call, I'm not playing with you. Okay, fine, I was just trying to help. So later that night, Delilah actually calls Tamar, because I think there's some rule, like, look, if one of us is mad at the other person, then we need to make up before midnight. So it's kind of like the equivalent of, being with your spouse or partner. It's like a rule is that we don't go to bed angry at each other. So basically from there, she calls and Tamar promises, hey, I'm sorry I lied. I care about Nate, because I think Delilah's like, you know what? Fine. You don't want to ask your boss. You think this is all business. That means you don't care about Nate. I do feel like that was a cold blow, because of the fact that, and there's some talking points I'll mention at the end of this review, but basically, Delilah says, okay, you'll talk with him tomorrow. And there's the debate about whether or not there's a case on this or not, because they want to settle, but looking at all the evidence of whatnot piled up against Leah, is there really a case? Let's settle this out of court. That way we can get back to being friends and this whole thing is going to be over. Because, I think they vouched to take some sort of break, like, hey, the wedding isn't for a few more months. This case will be over in about a month. So maybe we should just kind of put a pause in our friendship, the meeting up, the talking and whatnot. And then once it's over, we'll figure out where we stand in terms of like me being your maid of honor and whatnot. So that's an interesting take. I mean, that honestly makes a lot of sense, as opposed to them meeting up every episode and just kind of like trying to have girl talk, but work always intervenes. And to be completely honest, and maybe I'll do a video about this, I don't think Delilah is a bad person, but I don't know if she's the best friend, I don't know. So the episode ends with, Harper kind of giving a recap to Delilah about everything going on. And her father actually comes in and says, hey, I spoke with, this branch of the police department, and Osborne's donating about a bunch of body armor. So there's really not going to be any cops who want to go as in depth on Osborne as you would like them to for the sake of this case. So the police actually show up, and because of things such as tampering with evidence, Delilah is being arrested. And I love how Demetria stands up for like, no, I'm her attorney. And she's like, hey, we need to read her rights. And she's like, fine. So I like that one moment, because Harper and Demetria, they kind of have their little back and forth where, Demetria is a bit too intrusive and overzealous, where Harper's more of a happy-go-lucky, but hey, I kind of like value my own space kind of girl. It's like Demetria's got a new roommate who's annoying as hell. So I do like the fact that, she kind of jumped in like that. But that's it for the episode. I thought it was pretty okay. Like I said, 7 out of 10. But I don't think Delilah... Okay, don't get me wrong. Tamara did lie. She did lie. But looking at all 5 episodes so far, Delilah, once she has a hunch, I feel like she jumps down a person's throat, as opposed to giving them the benefit of the doubt. Like, yeah, your friend Tamara, and I mean, based off what we've seen, I agree that she's not as low down and cutthroat as the law firm that she works for. However, Delilah makes a good point. It's like, well, fine, if you make partner and whatnot, who's to say you're not going to be, and I hate to use this phrase because it's so generic and whatnot, but you're trying to keep your good morals, but if you become partner and whatnot, who's to say that you won't lose yourself and become part of the very system that you don't associate yourself with? Like, yeah, you play things by the book, you don't do underhanded tactics, but the company and the people you work for, they do. So that's a very solid point. But like I said, that'll be its own separate video. Nate just needs to realize that, his wife doesn't want to have anything to do with him, but that'll be something I mentioned in the preview for next week. But thanks so much for tuning in. Like I said, there's only allegedly 2 or 3 episodes left. I'll stick with Delilah throughout the rest of the season and kind of see where it stands once everything is all said and done. But make sure if you want to donate to the channel, you do so on PayPal or Cash App. And with that being said, I'll talk to you soon.